Hi guys, welcome to the Lunge Lift podcast. Today we are joined by a very special guest, Kelly Friel. Kelly is an absolute legend in the CrossFit community. She has twice podiumed at the CrossFit Games as a master. She's got 2 weightlifting world records, 3 British weightlifting records, and also a British rowing record. She's still mixing it in the main event with the non-masters athletes, which is incredible for a 43-year-old lady. And today we're going to get into all her top tips for continuing to train at the highest level as you age, how to balance a busy family life with competitive CrossFit training, and lots of other pearls of wisdom that she's accumulated along the way. I think masters or not, you're going to get a lot out of this episode. So yeah, listen up. But before we get into it, a big thank you as always to our sponsor, Wit Fitness. Please check out the website at www.wit-fitness.com and use discount code LL15 to get 15% off your purchase. Right, let's get into it. Kelly, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank
How are you doing today?
Me. Yes, good, thank you.
For the listeners who might not know who you are, please could you give us just a quick intro, a bit of background, and what you've been up to in the last week? It's been a major event.
So Kelly Friel, master athlete, 44 in August, so a bit of an oldie. Been doing CrossFit since October 2012 is when I took my first step into a box. I'm co-owner of CrossFit Southampton, so sort of busy times during non-lockdown and obviously coming out of lockdown.
Yeah.
And the past week we've been having fun at the European semi-finals for low lords.
Yes. And how did they go?
They went better than expected, to be fair.
Yeah.
I placed overall 16th out of the 30.
Nice.
So pretty mega chuffed with that, seeing as though I'm trying to hang in there with the young guns.
Yeah. I think it's important to clarify that that's not in the Masters competition.
Yeah.
That is in the main group, right? So that's 16th with all the previous games athletes and everyone else in the non-age group category. So
and Europe's such a tough category, like both male and female. Like you can't say one or the other, and it's just bonkers how strong that field is. So I was really pleased with my should I say achievements. It's not big for some, but I chipped away and got through 55 ring muscle ups, which is a big nemesis for me.
Wow.
And the legless rope climbs, I was 1 away from finishing. So again, like really close.
It's amazing though.
That is incredible. So go on, Rob.
What I was going to ask was, so when I was doing some research online and stuff like that, it said on the CrossFit Southampton website that you did cross training before CrossFit. Could you clarify what cross training is? Because it said that you was really good at this in your late 20s. So I was just like, what is this cross training?
So nothing compared to CrossFit. Right. However, at the time, me and my husband were like, "Oh, this is really hard stuff." Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it was really hard, and obviously set me up a good sort of fitness level for CrossFit. But it was, if you say in a gym, you pick out like 10 pieces of equipment. Mm-hmm. So it could be, it was like shoulder press, running, sit-ups, push-ups.
CrossFit before CrossFit got cool.
Yeah, and like literally it would be like, right, you would do 10 reps on a shoulder press, straight into 10 reps on a bench, straight into a 100-meter run, into a bike. And it was like, they would line the equipment up and it would be like the fastest person down the course.
Nice.
And that's it in sort of a nutshell. So they ran them in sort of like local gyms, so David Lloyd and places like that. So you would sort of travel just mainly, it was just in the UK, sort of up and down, like maybe Manchester, places like that. And then you would race against people and again, they did it sort of age group as well. And then, yeah, that was before CrossFit.
So, and have you always been active even when you was a bit younger? Have you always kind of been into, say, movement in general, like as you grew up, or was that something that you really started to get into when you kind of dabbled in this cross training?
I've always been pretty into my sport, so sort of like at school and at college, but I never took part like in a specific sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so I was never like a swimmer, or I did a bit swimming because you have swimming lessons and learn. In my junior school, so when I was around 12, 13, I would say that was when I used to do hockey, football, netball, everything that you could think of at school. And I did secretly, so not many people know this, I got picked to star in a Royal Yachting Association windsurfing video.
Wow.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So I'm a little bit of a
little bit of a star.
Yeah.
And they took us out to Mallorca to film it for 2 weeks, all fully paid. And then, it basically got filmed, and it's somewhere out there on a video.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And so the reason I ask is because it's very, very similar with myself. I was never really like, say, a rugby player, football player. I kind of just did things as my years, and I've kind of same thing. I've kind of dabbled. Obviously, you've really nailed down into CrossFit and done very well. But so I understand. Obviously, you're a mother. How old is your daughter now? She's in her teens, isn't she?
So I've got two. Erin is 16 and Imogen is 14.
Nice. And so I was talking to one of the listeners, and they asked if they could ask a question about postpartum. So it was quite interesting. Obviously, you being into training before having a kid. Did you find it relatively easy coming back into training, into your cross training, I guess, at the time? And what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if I look back now, if I was having a baby now, I think my return to fitness would be completely different. I didn't really have much guidance back then, if I'm honest. It was more of a case of once you had your 6-week check after, it was just, okay, let's get back into the gym and take it slowly. One thing that when I was pregnant with Erin, so who's 16, I got into the marathon by ballot.
Wow.
But then I fell pregnant, so I was like, well, I can't run it, And I'm no runner, by the way, but it's just one of those things you have to do. So I delayed it, but unfortunately, she was late, and she came in the December, and I was due to run it in the April.
Yeah.
And I did do it. I don't know how. Don't ask me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would say, sort of coming back, I tried to steadily come back, and then ended up running a marathon 5 months after.
Wow.
That is incredible.
That is pretty epic. How have you found juggling motherhood and training? What is a rough day in your life, essentially? Because that must be quite a challenge. It's a challenge for me, and I've only got a 3-year-old daughter. Now I'm struggling to see it. So you're a pro athlete.
Sorry to pause, guys. Is that I think there's some music playing, Kelly. Sorry to be a pain.
Okay. Let me go upstairs. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. It's just my headphones are not enjoying it.
I just run upstairs and try and lock myself away in another room.
Sure, yeah. Well, it's I don't know what the gym environment's just difficult. Gus usually does his calls in the disabled toilet.
Is this quieter?
Yeah, much better.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
Amazing.
We can.
Cool. I'm just locked away in another room now.
Nice.
Yeah.
There we go. So you were asking, sorry, just
so my question is just how have you found juggling motherhood around being a pro athlete, essentially? Because it's I struggle as it is with a 3-year-old daughter, and obviously my wife trying to find time to train. We make such an effort to allocate time in your day to train. So what are some of the struggles and things that you come across that you've managed to create like a good routine to be able to train as hard as you do?
So now they've got a bit older, it's become easier. So when I was sort of running backwards and forwards between school and stuff like that, and they were a bit more, let's say, dependent on me, it was harder. But I just, like you said, I tried to make a bit of a routine. So I would like get up, take them to school, come to work. Back then, I was most probably only doing like one training session a day, which I was doing prior, like sort of semi-final training. Because of time constraints, I would only be able to have like, let's say, an hour and a half to 2 hours max training. But in the past sort of year, or since I've been with Andy, he's been sort of giving me a morning one and then an afternoon. So my day was looking like I would get up, walk the dog, come back, sort the girls out before they went to school. Then I would do like my morning, let's say, max 40 minutes CD, have breakfast, do some work, and then like I'd either be coaching or whatever. And then in the afternoon, then I'd do my session, come back, pick the girls up, either bring them back to the box because either they wanted to train, or my husband would bring them in because then he joins in with the classes, and then I'd either like coach or whatever in the evening. So it's a bit of a juggling act, which some days is tough, but you sort of get yourself into a bit of a routine.
And how did you find your daughter's like willingness to train? Is that something that you kind of like not forced them into, but kind of showed them the ropes a lot, or is it something that they kind of saw and was like, do you know what, I want to do this as well? And like, how has that happened?
So if I turn back the clock to about 3 years ago, the youngest was the one that had more fire in her belly and be like, yeah, I want to do this. And, you know, she started like doing handstand walks and kipping push-ups and strict push-ups. And I think because they've always been in the box environment, they just watched all our members. So they're like, oh, I'm going to give that a go. I'll, you know. And then Erin wasn't as keen, you know. I'd be like, come on, let's do like a family workout together. And she'd be like, Mom, okay. Then when we went to the games in 2018, she came back, and exactly what you just said then, Rob, is I want some of that. I want to do that. And then her, I suppose, attitude to training changed. And then she was like, yeah, I want to start training. So then like she started sort of doing a bit more on her own, and then Imogen does the classes.
Oh, amazing. That's something which I definitely like. I want to be very careful, especially with my daughter Chloe, because it's like, I obviously have such a passion for training all sorts, and I want her to be active and stuff like that. But at the same time, I want it to be coming from her, that she sees us, because I know when I was younger, you just want to rebel against anything your parents say. So it's just like, that's why I was kind of trying to get some inspiration from you. Like, okay, how did you do it? So just so I don't mess it up.
And I think that's a hard thing, because a lot of people say, oh, do you really force them? Like, and when they were sort of like little, I'd be like, some days, come on, you haven't done anything. Let's just be a bit active today. As now, especially during lockdown, I would say Erin was a bit of my saviour, in a sense of, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I've got to do this and it's raining outside. And she'd be like, come on, Mum, let's do that. So I was like, oh, okay. Right. She wants to do it, so I've got to make an effort.
Oh, amazing.
That's incredible. Kelly, I just want to go back to the semi-finals prep, and the fact that you're competing in the full main group, and to the fact that you've got so many other commitments to juggle. How do you do that? Like, how do you actually compete with girls who are full-time athletes, like with no families, no other commitments? Some of them don't even have to, they're paid to train. What do you think it is that's allowed you to compete at their level, even though you have all this other stuff going on. But it seems like there must be some secret sauce that allows.
What's the secret sauce?
Yeah, your training's just so effective that in less time with more other obligations, you're still able to mix it in the main group.
That's a really good question, because some people say that, and my husband says that, and he says, well, he calls me a robot, because he's like, I don't think you're. I don't know. I guess I want to prove to myself that, you know, hopefully I've still got it to try and compete with the youngsters within that amount of time that I have. You know, sometimes I beat myself up a little bit because my gymnastics aren't as strong as where they could be. But then sometimes I think, well, you haven't got all the time in the world. Obviously, time has become a bit more, I've got a little bit more time now, so I'm managing to squeeze like a few extra bits in. But yeah, I just think I've just got to make the most of every training session that I have, because if I don't, then it's going to affect the performance going forward.
Sure. Has that been a change in attitude to focus more on quality rather, because you don't have the luxury of quantity?
Yeah, 100%. And I think sometimes actually, if I had all day to train, would I be a better athlete? Yes, maybe. But then on the flip side to that, would my body be more beaten up because I'm putting it through a lot more like pressure and stuff like that? So I think it's a bit of a balance, isn't it? Sometimes I'm like, oh, I just would like an extra half an hour just to do that accessory stuff to work on X, Y, Z. But I think at the moment, it seems quite a good balance, and it seems to be working. So I'm like, why change something if it's not broken?
I guess Definitely. It must be quite fun in a way to have to prioritize certain things, especially when you are time shoots. Like this is something I need to get better at, and it's just like at the moment where I'm dabbling in the world of triathlon, I'm shocking at swimming, and especially open water swimming compared to the pool. And I've had to drop down, say, my cycling, which I'm all right at, and just because I haven't got the time. I can't just be spending like doing double days. I just can't do that. So I'm like, I have to drop other things and just hopefully they maintain, just try and do what I can and work harder on the swimming. So I guess that obviously with CrossFit having so many modalities that you can get better at, that must be an interesting task, especially for your coach as well, to think, right, okay, what do we need to do to prioritize and where can we get the most bang for our buck?
Yes, yeah, 100%. But like with your swimmer, like you said, you've got to prioritize that because that's a weaker point for you, rather than, oh, I actually like the cycling and I'm good at cycling, but yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Masters listeners, Kelly, and I'm sure they'll all be desperate to know what other changes you've made as you've grown older. We already said quality over quantity. Have you consciously made any other changes to focus? I don't know whether you do more mobility and recovery work, or you've taken the emphasis away from the heavy barbell. Give us some tips on that, please.
So definitely mobility. As you get older, I think you just need to pay a bit more attention to that. Warming up, I'm okay at. Sometimes I'm just like, come on, I just want to get going, just because I'm limited to time. So, you know, some people, if I'm training with them and they're like, oh my God, how have you warmed up so fast? And I'm like, wow, because I've got X amount of time. But mobility, I would say, is a biggie. And also nutrition. So was it about 4 years ago? So the last regional, that's when I've been working with We Dominate Nutrition, just to really, because I don't think I was eating enough. So even though I thought I was eating enough, when I actually looked at it, it was like, you're having 30 grams of oats in the morning. How are you surviving on that on breakfast? So it was like, yeah, we definitely need to eat more. So even though, you know, there's that emphasis, isn't there, out there that people think if they eat more, they're going to put on weight and they're going to get fat and by eating more, it definitely helped my performance. So that sort of helped me. Mobility and just really looking after myself.
What does
Are there any?
What does that look like for
specifics?
you? Yeah, it's like what was that because what looking after yourself, I think, is because this is as I know when my dad trains relatively hard, and it's where he's turning 60 next year, and so he's still pushing himself, and his biggest problem is the recovery side of things. So he's got quite a busy life, especially looking after the dogs and stuff like that. So it's in like he does so much that he really struggles with the recovery side, and so looking after himself is everything that he needs to improve upon. So I think anything that you got will also definitely benefit him. That you got any tips?
So a lot of people say sleep. That's where one place I need to improve on. I'm not as good as some people with their sleep, but when I do get a good amount of sleep, it does make me feel better over time. Making sure you've got a good balance of your food. So again, making sure you're eating enough protein after training, getting the carbs in before. And I also look at my omega-3, so it's like take omega-3 and help my joints and stuff like that.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's the common one these days. Is it GLC 2000 that you used to take, Rob? Great for the joints.
Yeah,
got my parents
I take that as well.
Yeah, that was great because I think when I first was getting into CrossFit from say powerlifting, and it was just like it was something I got recommended early doors, and just for the trauma essentially on the joint stuff, and it definitely was beneficial, and I recommended it to a lot of my clients, and especially like ones that were say a bit older as well, that were just like I just want something to give me a little bit extra help with some recovery. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, if anyone from GLC 2000 is listening, we are open to sponsorship.
Yes, please, because I use
it. Great. So Kelly, how does it? I've always been curious. How does it work when you compete in the main group category? Are you allowed to do masters as well? And if so, how do you juggle that in your season planning?
So when we do the Open's exactly the same. You submit your score, so you go into the general Open leaderboard and also the Masters leaderboard. To be fair, I don't really focus on the individuals. I think because my goal was like the Masters, I look at that, and then like this last Open, I was like, oh my God, actually, I think I'm going to qualify for the individuals. And then it was like, oh. And then obviously I did for the quarterfinals, and then did the quarterfinals, and I was like, shall I do the quarterfinals? Because it's all that added cost as well.
Yeah.
Because then we had to pay to do the age group qualifiers as well as the quarterfinals. So we had to pay like 2 entry fees for that. And at one point I was like, shall I do it or shall I not? And then I spoke to Andy, and he was like, well, I'm going to program the WOD for you either way for that weekend. So you can either pay to register or just do them and not register. And then I was like, oh, well, what about if I had a chance of maybe getting to the semi-finals? You'd really kick yourself, especially because regionals finished obviously back in 2018. And this is like it would have been like the first sort of proper regional since then. So I was like, oh, it's $50. Let's just, COVID, haven't really spent any money. I haven't earned any money, but let's, let's just pay. And then, then I shocked myself that I qualified for the semis.
Yeah, amazing. And in terms of sort of peaking, did you peak for semis, or have you seen it as a bit of a games preparation weekend?
It was more of a games prep. Yeah. I was sort of like, I was there to have fun. Everyone's like, yeah, have fun, but take it seriously. And I was like, yeah, of course. But, my sort of main motto is you've got to enjoy it as well, because if you don't enjoy it, I think sometimes it makes it harder, and then you get more stress on yourself and stuff like that.
Okay, so just clarifying that you came 16th in the individual non-age group category, unpeaked as well. Okay, good. Very good. And when's the Masters Games?
So 23rd of July. is when we have to register, and I think it kicks off on the 25th or 26th of July. But I don't know if you're aware at the moment, we're all having a nightmare of maybe trying to get to America because the travel corridor is currently closed. So yeah, everyone's sort of like, who's qualified, everyone's messaging each other just to say, have you got any ideas how you're going to get out there? And I will be gutted because last year, obviously, we couldn't go. So that will be 2 years if we can't go. And it looks like the only way at the moment is by flying to another country, spending 14 days in that country, and then flying then into America, assuming you have all your negative tests and etc.
Wow.
So
it's like a month,
you could
basically.
be away for for a month.
Wow.
I know.
That's must be. It's going to be that as a, I guess, as an athlete and as a coach, that's going to be challenging as well. So obviously, because you're preparing essentially for the biggest competition of your year, traveling multiple times, not knowing what kind of setup you can have. That's going to be hard. But again, I guess on the flip side today, you've got to look for the positive is that everyone's going to be in the same situation. That's not from America, essentially. That from say Europe. Yeah. So I hope
everyone from Europe, is going to be affected. But like you said, the people from America and possibly Canada, because I think some people have already sort of gone across to America if they've known sort of the travel restrictions in advance. You know, if they announce, it's going to be an issue getting across, they've sort of gone across early so that they can train before. But yeah, that's the hardest thing is you want to prep for the games, but then it's like you're stressing because you're like, well, I might not even get there, or actually I might have to leave in a week's time to go somewhere else to get, and it's just it's just like, what's going on?
Wow.
Yeah. And like games, travel, stress aside, what does the next month look like in terms of preparation for you? Like, are you backing off normal life to focus on training? How do you manage your peak?
So luckily one of my daughters has finished school, so there's not so much stress there. Got a really supportive husband that's just like, right, okay, you know, full on focus training for sort of like the next 4 weeks, etc. And, you know, let's see if we can get you out. It's unlikely that the family will come this time, which will be a real shame, unless the travel restrictions change leading up to it, and then we can quickly book flights and they can come out. But yeah, the expense and everything at the moment is just full on. So obviously getting back into training this week. Just over the weekend, I'm going to just join in a few of the classes at the box, just to sort of come back in nicely, and then start again on Monday.
Excellent. And what's planned there? Lots of replication workouts, and you're getting a bit creative to simulate the weird and wonderful stuff they'll throw at you at the games.
Yeah, I think like I might get the handstand ramp out again because I haven't been on that for like a year. And a bit of like running on the air runner. They have announced that there's a rogue bike. So it's not the assault bike.
Yeah, moved now, haven't they? I saw that.
Yeah. So that's different. Like,
that's awful.
Have you guys been on a road bike?
They're terrible. They're so much harder. They're already bad as it is.
It doesn't tick over, does it? You like keep going, and it's like, what?
Yeah, I know.
So and some gymnastics. So get back on the gymnastics side of things. But also I've got to be careful with my training because in between the lockdown in December, I hurt my right shoulder and I've got a slap tear.
Oh.
So, but touch wood, wherever wood is, it was all fine for the through the semi-finals. There's just a couple of movements that niggle it, which is like strict handstand push-ups.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Turkish get-ups of all things.
Okay. Yeah, well, hopefully they don't program that. I think it's a tough one to put a movement standard on, isn't it? So,
yeah.
Yeah. Great. Just as we're coming up on time, Kelly, one question I wanted to ask, similar to something before, but given you've accumulated so much experience and wisdom in training, is there anything, if you could go back in time to sort of early 20s, what would you give yourself as advice, considering everything you've learned since?
I would just say, just focus on, like, try and get good at everything, as in have a good baseline of a good level of strength.
Yeah.
So definitely squat to make the legs stronger, because then that helps on everything. But also dial in sort of the gymnastics, so take that slowly, because I think that was not one of my biggest mistakes, that you try and rush into like getting things like a ring muscle up, and then you forget about the technique because you want to rush through and get it. And then you're then having to backtrack. So it's like, take your time, work on the positions and stuff like that.
Master the fundamentals. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're also keen to get to that end goal of, say, like using the ring muscle up as the example. That it's like, once we got it right, now I've just got to get loads of ring muscle ups. That's it. I just got to add one on every week type thing. But like you do, and it's I was pretty much exactly the same. And it took to come essentially to step back and really like hone in like your hollow and like the actual kip swing on the rings. Like it took so much like checking the ego and just like, right, just crack on and I'd say master those positions, because then the amount your ring muscle up, say using that as an example, that they just multiply, because then you have that foundation, you have that basic strength. And I think, strength training, as you said, like squats and getting some solid gymnastics work, I think is great advice for anyone that's, say, young, at any age really, that they're starting to look at any type of training, and because you can never be too strong, right?
No, and that's the thing, like when you look at sort of like I don't know, let's say a squat clean or something like that, and people are struggling because, they're cleaning and like, I keep failing it. Well, what's your, 3 rep max front squat? Well, it's this. But you're trying to hit that, and it's like, well, you need to get that stronger to then, if you can stand up, you can stand up.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely never can be too strong.
No. And following on from that, is looking back over your career since 2012, since you've kind of got into CrossFit, what are some of the main highlights that you can really pinpoint and that have really, like, you look back on and think, fuck yeah, that was good, that was cool?
It's obviously got to be the first year at the Games of 2018.
Yeah.
I sort of didn't really keep an eye on the leaderboard that much. Obviously you do from day to day, and then you turn your phone on and you get back to the hotel and you've got all these messages going, fuck, you're like sat in first, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, and I think the great thing from that, sort of from memory, the ladies that had been to the Games before that were in my category, a lot of them had been like multiple times. So when a UK, because I think it's the first time a UK athlete had been in that age group, they were like, who are you?
Yeah.
You're a rookie. Like, where have you come from? And, that was the first day. It was very much sort of like quite a closed group. They were lovely. By day 2, they're like, who are you? Where have you come from? What's your background? Where have you been the last, it's bam, 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 all these questions. Where have you been the last, 5 years? Have you been hiding somewhere? And it's just like, well, no, working on this, that, and the other. And I think the highlight coming away from that, not expecting to podium at all, and then walking away with a silver was a massive.
You did that twice, didn't you, as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a fluke. So that is absolutely epic.
Yeah, so I would say that was most probably sort of like the biggest highlight of that. And in the same year, going to regionals in Berlin and finishing, without looking at the leaderboard, I want to say I might have been like 13th to 15th. in the regionals, and to finish that as like the last ever regionals, again, I was like, that's memories ever that no one can take away from you.
Yeah,
that's insane. Yeah, incredible. Well, we're coming up on time, so just want to thank you so much for your time, Kelly. That's been really great to learn from you and hear all your stories. We wish you the absolute best of luck with your games prep. Hope you manage to get out to America, and we'll be following your progress closely.
Thank you ever so much. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, thank you. One episode that was with Kelly Friel. Thanks a lot for coming on, Kelly. We really appreciate it. And also, we really appreciate you for taking our time to listen to the episode. If you did find it insightful or you fancy sharing it with someone, we'd really appreciate that. And if you did enjoy it, we would love to see your feedback on Apple Podcasts. So don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Apple and Spotify. And as always, if you are feeling generous, that cheeky Apple rating will help us grow and spread the message of Lunge and Lift. So if you do have any questions or anything, you can slide into our DMs on Instagram at lunge.lift, or you can get in contact with us directly. All the links are in the bio just down below. But thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.